What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and we are back with day number 3 of Season 5 of Grand Party. Now, this was definitely getting to one of those periods where you got to get a bit more serious, right? Because the amount of retries and refreshes that you have, the more wins you get, is going to be a little bit more restrictive here. So moving in to the first match of day number 3, we found a quick team, and of course, a lot of people are using quick, which is somewhat surprising. A couple people mentioned to me, you know, maybe due to the fact that quick receive, like, level 8 attack increase, that might be one of the reasons why. Also, with the introduction of 6+ Final Tap Luffy, people might want to go ahead and trial him out in content. I completely understand that. Luffy on paper does look like a really good Grand Party leader, and I was contemplating trialing him out, but I wasn't confident enough to give it a go. Potentially next month we might actually go ahead and do that. I do think he has potential for sure, you know. He does boost quick strength and free spirit characters, and you know, if you're building a really solid strength team with, you know, GP leader Luffy, you could actually potentially take on Dex teams, but I think to take on Dex teams, it is a big risk in and of itself. So I'm using a 5-man Dex team here. I probably could have made the team a little better. Probably could have taken out Moria for Blackbeard. Blackbeard, I feel like, is a really good option when you are building a Dex team to go up against Quick, at least in Grand Party, just in terms of reliability, due to health cuts, defense down, additional fixed damage. He's just a fantastic unit. We talked more about him in yesterday's video, but Dex is going to be a big team in all 3, or technically 4 matches that you're going to see in this video, because unfortunately, I did actually take a bit of an L in this video, but luckily we had a retry. We're able to take the team back, and we'll talk more about it once we get to it. But the Dex team's basically sweeping this Quick team here, getting them quite low. Our HP is incredibly high still. We still have Luffy's Revive to activate as well. But of course, even if we got timed out, you know, we got to make sure that we have more characters than the opponent. So we do have to be careful. You know, we want to be bulky, but we don't want to be too bulky. We want to have some offensive pressure so that we can actually reduce their team down to really low thresholds. So if the time does run out, we can actually secure victory. And look, even when time gets really low, you're able to secure victory pretty comfortably with Dex due to characters such as Doflamingo that you're seeing on this team, but also characters like Super Type Zoro, and also like CP0 Rob Lucci is also another really good unit due to his defense down and damaging special. I know people were opting to use him last Grand Party season due to the fact that he was a fighter focused character. But now we move on to the second match, which was going to be up against, I think, was this a Psy team or a Free Spirit team? I can't remember exactly what this was, but I opted to use fighters, and we're using, obviously, Luffy, the green Luffy, as the GP leader. If you end up running, you know, a Dex-focused team, you know, Luffy makes sense to be the leader. But also, this Grand Party leader boosts fighter characters, but he also boosts Dex and Psy characters. So the fact that we have a fighter team that also maintains Psy and Dex, like, it actually works out pretty well in terms of the amount of boosts that we get here. But up against this Free Spirit team, I wasn't really too certain what I wanted to go against, because looking at the other opponents that I could challenge in the first match, they were all really difficult with, like, really insane Dex teams. But I saw this one with a Free Spirit team, and I thought that I'd want to give it a go, and I felt like fighters are relatively reliable in Grand Party, at least, and I thought that it was going to be pretty good, and it actually ended up working out quite well, surprisingly. Obviously, the burst of Luffy here allows us to fully charge 2 characters on our team that are either Dex or Psy, which is kind of good. So we can charge Katakuri, we could charge Don Shinjiao, we could charge Garp. So if Garp or Katakuri gets charged, we just get more damage towards the opponent. Ideally, we get Don Shinjiao to get charged because his ability is fantastic, where you can do special bind, you can also do special reverse, and inflicting special reverse against Free Spirit is so good, especially if you hit that Luffy, so you can't, so they can't stack all those specials in one hit against you. Luffy crew Free Spirit teams can be very challenging and very scary to come up against. But, you know, if it ends up working out in your favor in terms of the way that they order their specials, mostly it isn't actually that bad. I'll leave you guys with this, and we'll pick things up in the second match. Moving on to match number 2 of day 3, and this is where we opt to use a really bulky Dex team, and I don't know if I've showcased this exactly on the channel before, but Dex have a really good ability to stall out, and we are utilizing characters such as Blackbeard to inflict health cuts to the opponent, because most opposing Dex teams that you come up against will not be using Blackbeard, so you don't have to worry about health cuts. We have Brook, which can provide some additional heals. We have Queen that can do fixed damage, but most importantly has additional bulk in terms of HP and defense, but also has a really cool ability with his special that can inflict action bind. So we are actually speeding up this video. This clip here is at double speed because we are stalling out to 0 timer, and because we have more characters than the opponent. As long as we are able to maintain that when the timer ends, we can secure victory, and that's the whole goal here. And the thing is, in the next few matches you're going to see the exact same team come into play. However, you know, things don't go in our favor towards the end, and we'll talk more about it of course once we get there. But you know, Dex teams are just super reliable, and I feel like they're going to be a mainstay currently in Grand Party, at least until strength teams receive some more reliable characters to be using in Rumble. You know, recently we had the buffs for Legend Kuma, and strength characters in general are still good, but when you compare it to the defensive effects and the revive mechanic of Super Tandem Luffy, it's too risky, you know, to run those strength teams versus these Dex squads. However, as we mentioned in the first clip, you could potentially opt to use Final Tap Luffy as your GP leader, and then build a strength team around that, especially if you are focusing on characters like Toki, Odin, Kizuna Boa Hancock, or even the waifus. Those characters that are both strength and free spirit receive double buffs from Final Tap Luffy's Grand Party ability, and if you're able to have the burst of Final Tap Luffy as well, giving you additional damage, you know, you could potentially find a way to win in those scenarios. But anyways, we're able to secure victory there, which is quite good, and then we can move on to a quick team. Now, because we used a Dex stall team versus that versus the opposing Dex team, we don't really have many Dex characters left over. We could have potentially built a Dex team focusing around like versus Yamato and stuff like that. You know, honestly, probably would have been a lot better, but I felt like this was a pretty comfortable win. You know, we've got Roger as our GP leader, but the thing is opposing Roger. That's the really scary thing. And you know, some people say, oh, you know, versing opposing Roger's not that bad if you've got your own Roger, but some things will just not go your way sometimes. Luckily, this one we were able to secure victory, but it doesn't go in our favor in some of the upcoming matches, as you guys are going to see. So you see that, you know, I had the opposing team up because I wanted to launch my Roger Burst right before they were able to launch one of their specials to mitigate the damage they dealt to us. And now that the Roger Burst from the AI opponent activates in the first second of the game, after the first 20 seconds, the half stats is gone. But this is where things get really risky, is that because you've inflicted half stats to the opponent and you're doing so much damage to them, they immediately get their Roger Burst back and they can inflict it again. So they're using 2 Roger Bursts in 30 seconds, which is really hard to come back against, because in the first 20 seconds you're taking a lot of normal attack damage, and then you're inflicting your half stats, you're doing as much damage as possible. If they've got characters that can come in whilst, you know, those characters are not inflicted with half stats, and then you are inflicted with half stats, yeah, that things can get really risky. And you see, this match was actually really close to us just losing. Luckily, Kuzan's an absolute homie, and our normal attacks were able to get a couple of KOs, which is good. So we do end up winning, but it was a lot closer than I was really expecting. So now we move on to the third match of the Grand Party Day 3, and this one here, you can see I'm doing the similar strat. I'm using literally the exact same team with no changes whatsoever, and it was very similar, where it was a Dex team with 7 characters, so it didn't have the full 8. So as long as I was able to, you know, have one up against the opponent, I was able to win. And we are going to speed up this clip once again because we are stalling the full 100 seconds, right? However, things get a little dicey once we get to the second match, right? Which is, of course, it's going to be the Psy team versus the Quick team again, and I felt like it was going to be another pretty swift victory, but, you know, you saw how close the previous match was when we did Psy versus Quick, and when we run that back, unfortunately, it didn't go in our favor. I believe I actually kind of, I don't know if I would say I screw up a little bit here, but I think this might have been the match where I got a little panicked towards the end of this Dex mirror match. Due to the fact that they have Pell and they have Yamato, they are actually outputting a lot more damage than they normally would compared to normal teams, and it got really dicey towards the end, and they actually were able to use their Roger Burst near the end of the game, and I panicked a little bit and ended up using my own Roger Burst to combat theirs, just to make sure that I had more characters left over compared to the opponent. But looking back at it, I really didn't need to activate my burst at all, and I could have kept it for game 2, which would have probably secured me victory in hindsight. But look, it is what it is, you live and learn. So you see the Pell actually doing really good damage, and it's still one of the Pirate Rumble rare recruits that I still haven't yet got my hands on. It is Rumble Pell, and many consider him to be one of the top 2-3 best Rumble rare recruits in the game. Unfortunately, still haven't been able to pull him, so hopefully we can get him sometime soon. But, you know, obviously with the way that this team works, we are really hoping for big things with Queen. The 5k fixed damage is really nice, considering, you know, we have health cuts with Blackbeard, so we can get their HP down really, really low, and then Queen can kind of sweep up. You see, there's the Roger Burst from the opponent, and then I use my own Roger. Realistically, didn't need to do that because none of my characters had died yet, and I actually still had the revive from Luffy, whereas my opponent didn't have that, and plus I had 3 characters up on the opponent. Like, I just didn't need to activate the Roger Burst there, which would have allowed me to keep an additional one in the second match where we have Psy versus Quick. Now, this match is actually really close, and I thought I was going to get it, but it's the second Roger Burst from the opponent that really screws us up. And I mean, after like playing these matches, it just makes me think, like, I don't understand why Goldie Roger with his burst skill is a 2-time activation, with how insanely powerful it is and how easy it is to acquire, like the activation requirement for the burst. In my opinion, it shouldn't be a 2-time activation. Like, the ability is so game changing. You can be so behind, but halving the stats of the opponent means that they do less damage to you, you do more damage to them, quite obviously, and it can really turn the tides. And I think that having activation requirement of 2 is kind of wild. I think that with how powerful it is, you probably should only be allowed to have 1. So you see the opponent uses it on us, and our one is expired, of course, and then they can start using a lot of their specials, and we lose HP very, very quickly here. And while, yes, I could have probably had some Rumble rare recruits on the side, which probably would have given me a little bit more of a safe haven, you know, it really doesn't matter at this point. We lost Kuzan, we lost Rebecca Toy Soldier, so we lose a lot of bulk just from those characters leaving. Kaido knocking out Yamato when she was ready to use her special, but she died. Law's gone, and now we're just left with Odin. And, you know, even though Odin does do a lot of damage here, knocking out 4 characters, a 1v3 is just not going to go in our favor. So, unfortunately, we do end up losing this game. However, by losing this game, we actually get a little bit of insight as to what the final team is for the opponent now that it is hidden. And when we find out it's a strength team, I actually do shift up my team build a little bit just to make sure that I'll have a little bit of a higher chance of securing victory against this squad come the rematch. So here is my new team build for this, where I just opt to use just more characters, right? So my power is at 213,000. The upcoming days are going to be very challenging, so I'm really hopeful that we're able to find, you know, some teams that we can actually take on a little bit more comfortably. But in this instance here, I did actually change up the bench a little bit. The main line is the same, but I opted to use Sober Mask as a bench unit instead, you know, because we kind of made a mistake in the previous game where I actually used Roger towards the late game, and that was definitely a mistake on my behalf. Should have definitely kept it for the second game. So instead of doing that, I just put a Rumble Rare Recruit on the bench just to make sure that, you know, if worse comes to worse and I have a Rumble Rare Recruit come in, I feel a bit more comfortable with, you know, an actual Rumble Rare Recruit coming in rather than, you know, like a 1-cost support unit or a Fortnite unit, right? So that was the idea there. We also added some Rumble Red recruits to the side team that you'll see in match number 2, where, you know, if some of our characters go down, we can have some Rumble Red recruits take their place rather than have nothing or have support characters. And now that we know that the final team is a strength team, I did also opt to add quick units to the final team, as well as just using Goldie Roger on the bench just to make sure we have him as a leader. Didn't feel comfortable putting him on the side team, even though that was definitely something that you could do. But, you know, either way, it actually worked out pretty well, all things considered. Once again, we are speeding up this clip because I didn't want you guys to sit through, you know, all 100 seconds of us stalling out the opponent. It's not very exciting to watch, but I guess you get a little bit of an insight to show how this team kind of works. And, you know, we do get quite low HP, even though the opponent is not running health cutting effects. But it is nice that we were able to do that. We can get the HP very, very low with Blackbeard. Brook with some healing mechanics. Brook's kind of interesting though. If his health falls below 70%, he gives an additional level 5 defense. Brook, when he heals, actually gives additional level 5 defense. So even if he heals you above that 70% threshold, you actually still get defense out of it, which is kind of nice. But then we get to the point where we do the rematch of Psy versus Quick. This time around, we do have the Rumble Rare recruits on the bench, so I do feel a little bit more comfortable heading into it, because we only barely lost in the previous matchup. So now that we have an actual bench, we shouldn't have any issues unless if something goes catastrophically wrong. We do see here that the enemy does have the burst skill. I believe they use it immediately. So we're going to be doing a similar strat where we take the first 20 seconds, we use our GP burst, you know, obviously at the right time, right before they launch a special, and that is just the way that we're going to go about it. Unfortunately, they didn't use their burst in the previous matchup, so they do actually have an additional burst, but once again, the idea is we use a burst here, we hopefully get a win. If we don't win, we're going to keep a burst for the last matchup, which means that the opponent won't have one, and we will have one, which gives us a significant advantage against the opponent. So that's the idea there, and it actually worked out pretty well in our favor. Anyways, that is going to wrap it up from me. Hopefully your Grand Party matches have been very good so far. I know that without that low power strat, a lot of people are kind of struggling to build those teams, but look, it is what it is. We got to try our hardest to try and reach those 15 wins. Hopefully you did enjoy this video though. If you guys did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.